back to social media day here at IU Athletics. The website is shut down, but there are several ways that you can follow IU Athletics over the course of the day. Several coaches, administrators, and then we end up closing off the day with a softball and baseball broadcast to close off the day here on Social Media Day. And we've been talking to championship coaches. We've got one now in Ray Looze, swimming and diving here at Indiana. And Coach Looze, before we talk a little bit about social media and how to follow your program that way and your team specifically, yesterday was a special day in aquatics as Greg Louganis actually spoke here on campus. He also joined Joe Smith on his radio show later in the day. And when you talk about great athletes, the gap between Greg Louganis and the second greatest men's diver of all time is about as wide as it is between number one and number two in any sport ever.
Yeah, to be able to listen to a person of that stature, for those that don't remember Greg Louganis, he's considered the finest diver the world has ever known, multiple Olympic gold medalist, would have had more gold medals had 1980 happened for the United States. We boycotted that. And it was interesting. We had several meetings yesterday. We had a head coach's cabinet meeting, and in that meeting, Mike Mayer of the golf team talked about mental toughness and how to be really good in that area. And while he was at the Masters with Jeff Overton, he had a chance to spend 2 days with Tiger Woods, like one-on-one setting privately, and Tiger shared some things about that. And then basically Greg Louganis yesterday said the same stuff, how imagination is so very important in setting goals and making your dreams become a reality. And we actually talked to the team about that yesterday, and it was so nice to be able to reference Greg Louganis or even Tiger Woods, through the first-person activity that we got yesterday with him.
Well, looking at your programs over the course of the last few years and this year specifically, men's swimming and diving finished second in the Big Ten Conference this year, top 20 program in the nation. The women's swimming and diving team won their third consecutive Big Ten title, fourth in the last 5 years. And we'll talk about the men first. And when you talk about great student athletes here at Indiana, Derek Druin might immediately come to mind in track and field. We talked to Tracy Smith earlier, and he has Alex Dickerson. But Eric Ress, when you put it all together, he was Big Ten Swimmer of the Year. Doing it with injury, he's got to be close to the top of that list. Why don't you talk about him specifically?
From a very young age, he's been brought up in a pretty competitive environment. His father was an IU swimmer back in the 70s for Doc Councilman. And so Eric, from a very young age, has been brought up in an environment where kind of excellence is sort of expected. And again, that's something that Greg Louganis said that he was visualizing at age 3. We all know what Tiger Woods was doing when he was 4 and 5 years old with his father. And so Eric started at a very, very young age. He's always been a great student. He's always been highly ranked, even as an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old in the national age group rankings. But really, what really impressed us this year with Eric is he has tremendous ability to fight and overcome adversity. Whether it was the torn ACL last year or the broken hand this year, the guy just figures out ways to get it done. And again, that's something that was said yesterday. Sometimes you're just not going to feel good, or you're going to have some distraction or some issue going on, and sometimes you just have to get it done. And I remember he broke his hand at Big Tens.
This is unbelievable.
In the middle of the race, and again, we didn't know his hand was broken, and he spent that night all the way till the next morning basically figuring out how he was going to try to swim. And it was swollen, club-like, it was wrapped. And when you wrap a hand in swimming, it really, really affects things and slows things down. And he had to do a backstroke start, which means you have to grasp. So he had to grab with just one hand. And like when you look at the race, it looks, rough and sloppy, but he got second at Big Tens. With
a broken hand,
with one arm, 2 legs. And again, it's just not making excuses and finding ways to get the job done, whether it be in the classroom or volunteering in the community. He's one of our leaders in community involvement. If there's something that he believes in, he really jumps in and leads tremendously in that regard. I mean, he's just a great role model. I hope my son and daughter are like him and do things like him.
Looking at the women's team heading into this year, after winning the Big Ten championship a year ago, with two of the better swimmers in the history of the program in Vasenko and Smilas, perhaps some might have thought Indiana might take a step back, finish second or third. It was an overwhelming performance at the Big Ten championships, dominating at Councilman Billingsley. Of many satisfying wins for you, that had to be close to the top of the list, not only doing it at home, but knowing what this team had to overcome in order to be able to do it.
Yeah, no, it was very satisfying for the girls, and I really have to credit them. They're the ones that found a way to do it. They realized that they didn't have any stars and that depth was going to be our most important asset, and they really put that full force into the meet. And I'd also like to add just the overwhelming support of the IU community, whether it was from the athletic department or the professors, staff, students that just came out and really pulled for us. That had to be worth at least 50 points, without question. And I never take any of those things for granted, and I'm humbled to the fact that that can be taken away easily from you. But we're trying to figure out how to really put together the Big Ten meet, be successful there, and go into NCAAs and be even more successful there. And we've been spending a great deal of time this spring on plotting a strategy to increase our ability to have our success go over more weeks.
Well, you've gotten quite a few questions from audience members here who are watching us online. We've got an interactive component. First is a question from John. Can you share some stories from your USC days? Any funny stories involving other athletes?
I have a lot of funny stories from my USC days. And
we're not FCC regulated, so let it fly.
Most of which I can't share with you now. But back then we used to play a lot of pranks on the coaching staff, and hopefully no student athletes are watching this podcast. I would suspect they're in class, but when we'd be at the airport, for example, we'd the white courtesy telephone, we'd page the coaches incessantly, and they'd walk up there, grab the phone, and then they'd hear laughter on the other side and hang it up, or we'd take their overhead luggage and move it to the back of the plane. That was really good. One time we were in a hotel room, and you have the alarm clocks that plug in. We took them all and put like 12 of them in the coach's hotel room and had them going off like every half an hour on the hour. And Coach Dalen came back down and didn't bat an eye. Acted like he'd gotten a great night's sleep. So I've learned a lot from how he handled those situations, and the practical jokes that you do. And thankfully, they haven't done that to me as much. One thing they did here that was pretty funny is we had a snowstorm a few years back, like a pretty bad one. And, everybody's emailing me and texting me, do we have practice? And I just responded in a sort of a mass email, start shoveling. And they didn't like that. I wish I could have that one back. Well, they buried my avalanche truck. Buried it good. And it took me about an hour to dig my way out. Like they had snow in the wheel wells. And so those are some good stories, I think, that would be fun.
You're a popular guy. We've got several questions. This one from Anna P. She is a new coach at a local swim team around here in South Central Indiana, I would imagine. What are some tips that you can give about coaching and swimming specifically?
The best tip I ever received was when I was at University of the Pacific. They had a volleyball coach there for the women's team named John Dunning, who's now at Stanford, and I think he's won 4 or 5 national titles. And he sat me down as a young coach and said, always remember to bring 100% energy to your coaching. And because he says the kids know. If you're 85% or you're 90% effort, you don't have to know everything about, your sport. And coaches learn too. I learn every day from my athletes or other coaches, but you got to bring 100% energy to what you're doing, and the kids will really respond to that.
Question from Josh, and I was going to ask this one, so good work, Josh. Great atmosphere at the Big Tens. Can you talk about the facility upgrades that he noticed when watching your team compete?
You know, that's something we're really proud of. And Fred Glass and Chuck Crabb, and there's more people involved too, but Pat Kraft, they did a wonderful job of taking a facility that's probably 15 years old or more now, and we did what's called branding. And you know, to paint a room like that, and I guess you call it a room, it can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they came up with the idea to have Sport Graphics, which did the Super Bowl, you know, to put all the signage there, come in and really do a good job of honoring our history and tradition. And it's still not quite completed because we're trying to blow up pictures on a large scale and have them not be distorted. So we have a few more pictures we want to do, and then the high definition scoreboard technology, like this morning, what we're doing. I think with young people, that's really important to reach out, and that high definition scoreboard does that. I think it was just so crystal clear, and you know, people were able to look at replays, you know, and see every little detail. Because in swimming you can miss a lot, and in diving as well. So that's phase one. Ideally, we have a phase two that will happen, but it's got to happen after like baseball and softball, because we really need, you know, new stadiums for those two sports. But what we want to do is knock out the non-grandstand wall and put grandstands on that side, and basically have a whole athletic side there, where we have new offices and a dryland training center for diving, which will help us have, you know, one of the top diving centers in the country, and just more space. But most importantly, we want to be able to draw NCAA meets here and U.S. national championships to IU Bloomington. Traditionally, they've gone up to the natatorium, and they built this pool with the thought that they didn't want to compete back then with the natatorium. But now the natatorium's reaching the end of its life cycle, and we want to bring those kind of competitions down here to Bloomington.
Well, Coach, your teams have done remarkable jobs over the last couple of years, winning Big Ten championships on the women's side of swimming and diving, and the men have gotten better and better every single year, and a remarkable performance this past year. Social media-wise, Melanie Schneider does a great job with swimming, not only incorporating several YouTube videos of not only your recaps, but of student athletes who had particularly good races in the game stories. But you can follow IU Swimming on our YouTube channel on IU Athletics, and it's a great way to get to know the student athletes in your program. And Margot Farrell, I guess, is going to be working with us this upcoming summer. She's going to do some voiceover work. She's going to do some stuff. Apparently, she's got some pretty good talent on air.
She's really good in the broadcast journalism area, and she's a journalism major, and who knows what she'll really end up doing. But she's very comfortable behind a mic or in front of a camera, and you know, I'm interested to see how, you know, the professionals think she does. But that'll be exciting, because I love to see former athletes kind of get into that line of work, to show, you know, people that athletes are good students, and you know, they're also people that are multi-talented and interested in other areas as well.
All right, Coach, thanks so much for joining us here on Social Media Day.
Thank you.
Speaking of high-tech, we've got our high-tech coach coming up next, Clint Wallman, Indiana Women's Golf. We're going to talk about his program and ways that you can follow his program here on Social Media Day, but first we're going to take a break.